Hello and welcome to Who Shot First. This is your host Alex, and I am just quickly announcing that Who Shot First, Ethan and I will be participating in the official Star Wars Podcast Day, and this will be taking place on February 7th. We will be releasing a special episode that day to celebrate, and the reason it is coming out on the 7th, it is the anniversary of the first ever Star Wars podcast, which premiered back in 1999 on February 7th, Jedi Talk. We hope to see you there. Thank you.
Don't you turn against me.
I felt a great disturbance in the Force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
You're not with me, then you're my enemy.
You thunder against me!
You have done that yourself.
Release your anger. Only your hatred can destroy me.
Not leave it in darkness. You were the chosen one.
Hello, and welcome to Who Shot First, a Star Wars controversy podcast, your one-stop shop for all Star Wars controversies. I'm your host, Alex, and with me is our other host, Ethan. And today we also have our wonderful correspondent,
Sarah.
Welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Thanks for having me back.
Great to have you back. It's great to have different personalities on the show.
That's right.
And so today we have a wonderful podcast. Our podcast is a very interesting controversy because it's one of those weird controversies that's kind of two controversies in one, if that makes any sense. We are going to focus, I will say, on the is Clone Wars for kids argument, but there is the flip side of Clone Wars is a kids show, so not worthy of adults watching. So there's the two pieces of the two different controversies and kind of the same type of thing. We are going to discuss mainly today, is Clone Wars a child appropriate show? As there are many people online who and out in the Star Wars universe who think it is not necessarily a child appropriate show, even though it was on Cartoon Network and all of that jazz. But we will be bringing up like adult conflicts and adult themes to iterate that, yes, it is not just for kids. Adults can very much enjoy it.
Just out of curiosity, do you know what the official rating is, like on when you started on Disney Plus, or like does it say?
It is rated PG.
Okay.
So yes, no, I looked that up, and I will say, first off, so the controversy is it is portrayed as a kids show, and it is on Cartoon Network, and was designed for a show for kids. The controversy comes from people thinking that there are certain themes on the show and certain visuals and everything that are maybe a little too mature.
Dark?
For
Too dark?
Dark. Yeah, dark. I would say dark is not mature, but too dark for younger audiences. So today we have Alex. I am going to be on the side of that it is too dark for younger audiences. Sarah, what side are you going to be on today?
I'm going to be saying that it is for kids, but I do want to say right off the bat, like I really see and appreciate all of the arguments saying that it is, mature or dark. And I think, you have to take it on a case by case basis with kids. And I'm going to say, kind of broad stroke blanket statement, Clone Wars is for kids.
Okay. Ethan, what side are you going to take?
Yes, I also agree that with Sarah with saying that it is for kids, but it definitely has some darker moments, not necessarily that all viewers, especially young ages, should necessarily view. But generally, yes, I would say it's for children, appropriate for children.
Generally for kids.
Kids.
Okay.
Yes.
So that means we are now going to move on in our episode. Let's start off with it is for kids. And then I will bring up my not hardcore criticisms, but my things of how do you defend a certain element and stuff like that.
This is where the fun begins.
All right, Ethan, would you like to go, or Sarah, would you like to go first? Ethan, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Okay, so I think, there are so many sort of fantastical things about the show and the adventures and just the colors and the themes. If some of the episodes, there's like a sort of a central theme around different parts. Like there's a series where they go to a town or a village on Felucia, and they have to train these farmers in combat to sort of defend themselves. And so I see that as sort of giving kids the idea of bravery and sticking up for themselves. And yeah, there are just those teachable moments. There are excitement that any kid watching can enjoy. And there are just so many different things for different age groups that lots of kids can enjoy.
Okay. We can have Sarah kind of come in as well. And then if you think of anything, you can kind of add in on the end. Sure.
I was going to say, to piggyback off of what Ethan was saying, that there's certain arcs that would not hold up for a more adult audience if that was the base. I'm thinking particularly, I think it was season 4 or season 5, where you have like the 4 droids and the mini general like wandering around in the desert for 4 episodes. Like that's very much kid focused, because it's just kind of like Three Stooges slapstick comedy, and adults aren't gonna have the patience for something like that. And I think the emphasis on Jar Jar, the adults aren't necessarily going to have the patience for. So I think some of those episodes, shift the balance from those darker episodes where it is really war heavy.
Okay. That's very interesting. Or would you like more personal examples? Because I can bring up examples of things that are good about it for kids.
I have a couple of them. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I apologize.
No, I wanted to see if Ethan had anything else. So I guess we'll start with a bit more substantive as to why I think Clone Wars is a kid show, and then kind of work towards the lighter arguments. So I think one of the main reasons is because you have Ahsoka as a main character. To me, George Lucas got to do whatever he wanted with the show because he funded it all with his own money, right?
Minor thing. Who is Ahsoka, for those who don't know who she is?
Oh, okay. Ahsoka is Anakin Skywalker's Padawan. She is introduced in the Clone Wars movie. I don't remember exactly if she was meant to go to Obi-Wan or meant to go to Anakin, but either way, she ends up with Anakin. And Anakin trains her throughout the arc of the Clone Wars up until, that's spoilers, but up until season 5, where then she is no longer his Padawan. But I'm not going to say any more than that for spoiler-wise. So throughout Clone Wars, we get to see Ahsoka grow and learn, not only as a Jedi, but as someone, young, growing up in a time of war. As she grows and ages, our understanding of the war gets more complex. I think if you look at the battles in the first 2 seasons, it's a lot more simplistic of like good versus bad. Whereas if you starting to get into the later seasons, 4 and 5, there's a lot more nuance. I think that's where we get the episode that's literally titled Heroes on Both Sides, because, both sides think that they're, fighting for, to bring a better life to people. And to me, if you wanted the Clone Wars, back when in the original Star Wars movie, when Obi-Wan Kenobi said, I served with your father in the Clone Wars, and that George Lucas could have made it a show focused just on Obi-Wan and Anakin's adventures. And they could have just been running amok and doing whatever. And that could have been rated pretty much whatever he wanted it to be, again, because he funded this out with his money. But I think by choosing to have a Padawan that we see grow with the audience, essentially, it's meant to be for kids, because we're seeing the Clone Wars largely through Ahsoka's eyes. Yes, she's not in every episode. We get to see episodes from the clones' perspectives, from Anakin and Obi-Wan's perspectives, from Jar Jar's perspective. So I think by choosing to have Ahsoka be a narrative aspect, it is meant more for kids, because we're seeing it through her eyes versus, Obi-Wan and Anakin's whirlwind adventures. And then I think another point to it being for kids is you have what I've heard it's being called the fortune cookies at the beginning of each episode, basically kind of saying, here's the lesson we're going to learn today, kids. Friendship is powerful, or like patience, Padawan, or whatever it is that, again, adult audiences or older audiences aren't going to have the patience for something like that. And I think kind of like my last silliest point would be there's no blood. Adult shows have blood in the battle scenes, and we see lots of people get shot and other more horrible things than that. And there is no blood.
Yeah, they do say hell once or twice in
Yeah.
the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, also I'll mention that, sometimes it seems with those kind of more kids oriented episodes, they would put like some kind of character or some kind of battle scene in and out of those episodes to try to maybe hook older viewers. Because if you like in that scene where they're wandering through the desert, that's where they end up finding the clone commando. And, obviously people who grew up playing the Clone Commando video game and stuff were all on board for that arc or for that one episode where he's a part of that. So it's like, seems like some of those episodes, right, that are more kids focused, they try to just throw that in there so that right, you can be entertained towards the end after watching literally the null void, just boringness. Yeah.
Okay.
And with the Jar Jar ones too, like Jar Jar, he teams up with Mace Windu, who's a much more compelling character.
True. I would agree with those. I would agree with some of the. I will say personally, and this is without any of my research or anything, like the fact that there's no blood personally to me does not mean anything, only because, and I'll say the reason why is because there's just so much death. There is so much death in the Clone Wars. Like you just see clones get plowed down, and it's rough for me to watch.
Wasn't like the idea that there isn't blood necessarily because the blasters are singeing, they're killing them, but they're like singeing the wound.
Cauterizing, but no.
Cauterizing.
I mean, in the like Legends, Clone War, Legends, that's what's happened. Yes, but that is not the case in real time, I don't think.
Okay.
Anyway, I mean, there's no blood in any of the sequel trilogy, is there?
Yes, the first battle where Kylo Ren takes Poe into custody, that stormtrooper is bloodied, and then he puts the handprint on Finn's helmet.
All right, yeah, you're right.
But to be fair, that's really the only blood I can think of in Star Wars, besides like necessarily like a bloodied lip from a bit of fisticuffs.
Well, I was gonna also bring up Revenge of the Sith, but then I was like, well, it's not blood, but it's charred, terrible, like Anakin. So like that's so I'm like, that's not blood, but like that's so right. I wasn't gonna be like, that there's no blood there, but I'm like that's worth the PG-13 rating there.
Like literally there is no blood.
Yeah, literally it's all gone. But I would say, so that's where I would argue a little bit in that of just like, because no, for me it's just like there is so much death. But that will tie into one of my positives that I found from another place. This is from a website called warisboring.com. And it's an article that says we need kids shows about war. And so in this article, it talks about how it is past time that Americans began having some frank conversations with their children about America's wars. A show like Clone Wars can help, implying that with the Star Wars, with the different aspects, like you can discuss the war, what's going on, what you could even dive into this different episodes of, you see the clone, like the Republic is not always on the right side in Clone Wars. And that's the thing I will give it, is that it's not always on the right side. Also from the same article, it says, what constitutes acceptable losses in battle? Would you torture a prisoner if you thought it would help you save your friends? Should you obey the orders of a commander you believe to be reckless and unethical? And how do you even define victory? So these are subtle questions, subtle statements that can be made that kids can kind of get behind and understand. What do you guys think about that? The article says it gives you more options to discuss war and, like, again, the acceptable losses of, like, especially I'll say like the Krell arc, where the Jedi Master specifically is like, I'm going to kill as many clones as I can because I'm evil and stuff like that. And so what do you guys think about that?
I can definitely see how certainly certain themes could be used as talking points for kids, for teaching them about that kind of stuff.
I would agree with that.
Okay. And the last article I found was called Star Wars Prequel Appreciation Society blog.
Yeah.
Yep. And they say that the Clone Wars is more subtle, designed to make you ask questions instead of answering them for you. Clearly, the war is changing the role of the Jedi, and they are being made to contradict their own philosophy in order to fit into that role. Maybe that's a little sophisticated for a very small child, but that's why parents are supposed to watch with their kids and discuss these things.
Yeah, I suppose. I guess I'd be curious to know how many parents are watching it with their children. You know, if they're just watching it, you know, by themselves, or if they actually if everyone in the family's all sitting down to watch the Clone Wars, then have a discussion about it. But I can definitely see this how, right, like the article was saying, how it's subtle and how they kind of change over time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Two more things about this. I have so I found out that yes, Clone Wars has a PG rating, but the only other rating between PG and the next highest up is TV 14. And so some other people were saying that slapping Clone Wars with a TV 14 rating is going way overboard. TV 14 puts Clone Wars on the same playing field as gory CSI franchise, Jerry Springer, or the bleep-filled sexualized reality shows of Bravo. To which I actually agree, is that Clone Wars is not on that level. But
Yeah.
it is still, I would say, not for young children. But this is again where my personal opinion in my research changed, because this is a quote from George Lucas. Star Wars is just for kids, but everybody seems to like it. This is really at exactly the same level as the feature films. We didn't dumb it down. The series is really designed for adolescents, kids going from being children to becoming adults. So to me, that very much defines Clone Wars as being aimed at the 12, 13, maybe 11 to that age group. So I personally would not call them kids. I would call that young adults or adolescents. And so that's where I get into the argument of, I think that sounds, because there's people like, oh, Clone Wars just for kids, it's a kiddie show. And I'm like, there's a lot of deeper stuff in here, and it's aimed at those types of kids. Personally, from what I've seen of it, that's where you need to look at, of like, it's aimed at those kids who are more interested and who can think about that kind of stuff. Because I don't, is again my own opinion, but I don't like the argument that, oh, Clone Wars is for like the young kid, and it's like the 7-8-year-old or whatever, and they're watching this, and they watch all these clone troopers get mowed down or whatever, and you're just like, oh, they're not mentally aware enough to have it affect them. I don't like that argument. I think that's, I don't know how to say correctly state it, but like that to me is, it has, personally, I think it would have an effect. Now, I will say I'm okay. There are some people online saying like, oh, well, you can watch it with your parents. And I'm totally okay with that. That's the big thing that I think a lot of what I believe of, like, if you watch this with your parents, you're fine. Like, you can do whatever age you want, because then your parent can watch it with you and you can discuss it. The problem I see is that most parents don't sit down and watch cartoons with their kids. They're going to sit down, they're going to put their kid in front of a TV, or their kid's going to find Netflix or Disney Plus now or whatever, and just be like, oh, this is Star Wars, cool, I'm going to follow that and watch just all of it, and not have an adult there to discuss it with them. So if that's what's going to happen, I think it's more aimed towards the adolescents, the older people. What do you guys think?
I think the quote that you have from George Lucas is a good one, and I think you see it especially here with the sequel trilogy, because Revenge of the Sith was the first Star Wars film to get a PG-13 rating, Everything else had been PG, but back in the 70s, 80s, there really wasn't a PG-13 rating.
There was not.
So to me, it'd be interesting because I think those films, I would agree with the current ratings of Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones of being PG, but it'd be interesting to me to see if, the original Star Wars trilogy was made today, if they would still be a PG rating or if they get bumped up to PG-13. Because I think that speaks to your point of, George is like saying we're not dumbing things down for anybody, but at the end of the day, the target demographic may be, kind of a middle school age child who's right on the cusp between those ratings. And so it's like, well, which way does the coin fall?
Yep.
I saw Revenge of the Sith in 2005 and I was 11 or 12. So definitely, obviously not 13, I guess. So I'd say, right. I like your point, AK, of Alex, of if your parent is watching it with you, that's definitely, I think that's a better way, because just, you're right, then they're able to watch it with them and discuss, what's going on. So right, the kids are seeing all of this death and, are able to talk to them about it, I guess.
Yep.
I think that's right. I definitely agree with that. But I don't like the thing about the quote with George Lucas about how Star Wars was made for kids. It's like,
That's something else. We'll dive into that later. Yes.
Okay.
We'll dive into that later.
All right.
Yes. Him saying it's only for them.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So now we're going to dive into some of the plot lines, and so some parents. So that I found some online. I went to Common Sense Media, and so these are some reviews from parents about the Clone Wars, and this is on the negative side, or at least for them considering, because it's rated PG. And
I got a bad feeling about this.
just a few other things. We initially let our 6-year-old watch this, but regretted it after seeing episode 2 of season 2, in which a Jedi gets tortured until he dies. A later episode had female robots, androids with curvaceous breasts, slightly open mouths, and vacant eyes. Great stories most of the time, fantastic animation. I love it, but I'm 42. Let the youngsters watch something more suitable. Any response?
I was going to say, like, every person is entitled to their opinion. I think your argument that the robot has curves is a little beyond the point.
This is not my argument.
No, I recognize that. But if they're saying this robot has curves, that means it's mature. I'm like, no, we need robots of all body types. So rock on.
Rock on.
Okay. Next one says, being a Star Wars fan, I love this show. Having said that, I think this is even less appropriate for kids than the actual movies, even though it's animated. There are people being stabbed and shot, limbs severed, heads cut off. Furthermore, there are quite a lot of political themes as well, which I doubt any 8-year-old would understand. Although there are quite a couple of good messages, like war is not all about good and evil, and even raises the question why the Clone Wars are being fought in the first place. However, I don't see my kid watching the show when he is 8. If you are a teenager and like Star Wars 2, it gives you a more in-depth experience to what is happening between episodes 2 and 3, and I can only highly recommend it.
Now, to me, that makes sense. And I don't know if you're in your research, because yes, Clone Wars premiered on Cartoon Network at first, but if I remember it, it was kind of an obscure time. So like a 6, 7, 8-year-old isn't going to tune in at that time. It was meant to, in my brain, the original time that Clone Wars aired was a little bit more in line with, say, a middle school audience.
So in my research, I did find out Clone Wars aired at 7 Eastern on Friday nights for a good portion of its run. That's where it gets a little dicey, because it is the first animated show it did break boundaries when it was the first animated show to be aired on Cartoon Network, and also Cartoon Network's adult version. They have an adult session called Adult Swim that is cartoons for adults. And so it aired on both of those. So it aired on Cartoon Network for kids and on adult Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. A piece of where the issue along that line lies is season started with about 4.5 million viewers each night. And it was on. By about season 3, it dropped to 1.5 million. And so Clone Wars had a viewership problem. So I would agree that yes, for those first couple seasons, they were losing viewers. So by the end of season 4, they were at 1.5 million. And they needed more people to keep it going because, again, this is a really expensive show to make. And so they changed their time slot, and they did it at 8:00 on Saturday mornings, aimed at young kids, young boys in particular, and it didn't work. So that's just a small piece that I would add there of like, yeah, it was originally supposed to be at like for adults maybe, or like the adolescents older. But I would also say, like, that's a terrible time for a TV show on a Friday night. All right, keeping going. Oh, man. Okay, this is a big, long one. I like it. Okay, despite what I'm about to say, I want to start off by saying this show is brilliant, and I'm picky. Many view the show as a kid's show. It is absolutely not. Common Sense wrote their review based off of season 1, which is very lighthearted and just contains droids being destroyed all for the most part. If you don't know, there are 7 seasons of this show. Starting season 2, the violence ramps up a lot. The show is not designed for young children. Violence is very frequent. Characters are murdered in cold blood on screen. Characters' necks are crushed with them suffocating and sound effects of their necks being crushed. Assassins and bounty hunters snap necks and shoot and tear apart characters. Dark elements occur, such as for there to be balance between good and evil must exist. Also, how body count of humans and other characters being shot, heads being sliced off, on-screen torture, and a lot more. I'm only on season 3 out of 7, and even though I'm an adult and can handle rated R and TVMA shows all the time, this show is simply not made for children. Not to mention, strippers are introduced briefly and erotic dancers. Drinks to have them have the same effect as alcohol, and I hear later seasons only get more intense. Again, this show is absolutely brilliant, but contains more violence than any Star Wars movie ever made, including Episode 3, even though it is a cartoon. 13 is the minimum age I recommend. It just has too many dark messages to be put in a child's mind. The politics and the writing of the show is far too complicated for kids to understand anyways. If you plan on watching it with your child, skipping through violence or racy scenes is pointless because of how frequent they are. Just be careful. But if you are a teen or an adult, don't let the first half of season 1 fool you into thinking it's for kids. The writing quickly gets dark. Because yeah, we haven't even talked about the themes I get to bring up, and you guys are talking about that with young adults. The themes. There's a bunch of themes that I get to bring up, and you get to say that they're for their kids. But continue on that thought, on that argument. Do you disagree?
I mean, I would definitely argue that it gets progressively more violent and intense. You know, I think that, I mean, I don't think they're as frequent as this person is describing, but yeah, I mean, I guess are these kids, like, how young are these kids? I'm just curious, like,
what kids?
Are they talking like, okay,
these are not kids that are talking, these are adults.
No, I know, but like when they say it's not for kids, like, are they, I'm just curious, like, how,
you just said 13 was the youngest you would recommend it.
Oh, right. Okay. So that's a little extreme, I think. You know, you don't have to be a teenager to enjoy this show. You know, if I think while there are more older adult or you know, teenage themed aspects in different episodes, I don't think they they really, I don't think it, I guess, I don't know. I don't think it would affect a child as much as people think it would. Like,
Okay.
I don't know if necessarily, they see if a kid's watching the show and they see a character like, drinking and starting to stumble around, I don't know if they would necessarily associate that with being drunk automatically or
Not to give Sarah
but
to
maybe.
cut Sarah off, but with a point. But what about a character committing suicide, as does happen on the show? Because she'd rather commit
Well-
suicide than be a slave.
Remind me of that arc. When does that?
Togruta arc.
I was gonna say that's not when Ahsoka pretends to be a slave, is it?
Yes, it is. It's,
Okay,
it's
then.
when it's Ahsoka and Obi-Wan become slaves in order
Yeah.
to find the Togruta. Yeah, to what happened to all the Togrutas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So they go to the planet and there's like the cat Cleopatra kind of ruler who
It's Zyphira, right? Or
yeah.
yeah.
And so she gets Anakin in her back pocket. But yeah, when Obi-Wan and Ahsoka are down with the slaves, there's the one, I don't remember if it's a Twi'lek or a Togruta. Twi'lek, thank you. But yeah, she jumps. She's like, I'm not going.
She tries to assassinate somebody and then fails, and then she's like, I'd rather die now than to face the horrors of what would to come.
Well, see, and then there's technically two because someone jumps to their death in Mandalore. It was someone affiliated with Death Watch, wasn't it?
I don't know about that one.
I
don't remember that one.
From what I remember.
Oh, yes.
Do you
Yes.
remember more, Ethan?
Yes. So it's some kind of, or some informant jumps rather than.
Oh
being
yeah,
captured by
yeah,
the
right.
Republic.
But
I
anyway,
believe
like
you.
back to the Togruta episode. Like in that same episode, as Obi-Wan is there as slaves, like there's a slave master and he literally just pulls a lever and kills like dozens of slaves and just said, that's an example of what you meant, what you mean. Like you don't mean anything to me. Is that okay for young kids?
Man, I got to watch that arc again because I'm totally blanking on those scenes. But that I would say is a little too dark for kids. Yes, I would definitely agree. If you're just openly killing a group of people for no reason, or essentially just to serve it as example to others, that's dark. Probably
Yep.
shouldn't have youngsters. Probably shouldn't have youngsters see that.
Yes, it is dark, but to counter it a little bit, I mean, it very clearly communicates like whatever is going on here is not okay. So it, to me, like, again, I think, teenage, middle-aged school children are going to understand that better. But, and I don't want to support the death of hundreds of Twi'leks or Togruta here, but I feel like that's what I'm doing no matter what I say. But
You're not. No, I will say now you're not doing that because I think it's a powerful episode. I think that that arc is a very powerful arc. I think it's a really well done arc. I'm just saying personally, I don't think a young kid should be seeing that because they're not going to be able to process it without like an adult watching it with them. Of like, yes, they might not know, they might know, yes, this is wrong or whatever. But again, I still feel that brains are still being built, still growing. So my
Developing.
personal opinion is that they should have somebody there to kind of explain things of like, so why is that person doing that? Of like, because it's more than just it's bad. Because that's the thing with like that episode too. It's like they're not just doing it because he's an evil person. He's doing it because he wants money, because they're powerful. That's more of where I'm going with it.
but I think, and this is, I think, the danger of saying like Clone Wars isn't for kids, because we'll point to one specific episode and say, this is where they went over the line. And I'm like, well, okay, yes, this one specific episode you went over the line. But I think kids have difficult lives. I mean, there's a lot of kids out there that have seen or been privy to a lot of things that, in my 20 plus years of life, I've been privileged to not have experienced. And I think the Clone Wars tackling some of these darker aspects and being real about it, like kids can handle it because and when I say handle it, not like literally every single piece of the Clone Wars, but I think like broad picture, like they can handle that, like, yeah, war is death and violent and it sometimes doesn't make sense and I can get angry about it and that's okay. That, you know, people die and that I see my friends going through this, that, or this thing or that thing, and or I'm going through this or that thing, and they can relate to these darker subjects. I think that's one of the dangers of like one thing happening in this TV show and saying it's not for kids, because then you kind of a helicopter parent and you coddle them a little bit. So it is a fine line of like, this is a mature dark content that their brains can't process versus like kids see injustices, kids see difficult things in their normal life, and we sometimes can't shelter them from that. And I think shows like the Clone Wars can help a little bit if they can see parallels.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, thanks for taking the wind out of my sails.
You're welcome.
Because now I have more themes that I could bring up, but then I'm like, well, you just kind of torpedoed them all.
Well, we can reverse this order in your podcast.
No. Just to wrap us up. So this is a quote from Disney, or not from Disney, but from Daniel Logan, the guy who played young Boba Fett. Right. This is from comicbook.com. And he says, Disney, they canceled it. I think it was getting a little too graphic at the time. It was just too graphic. I think for what Disney was used to. Actually, it was getting really graphic. So that's what Daniel Logan says about when Disney bought Star Wars, and then saw that they're like, yep, this is getting a little too graphic for us. It also didn't help that they were on a rival network. But then this is another quote from Sean Carey, Netflix vice president of content. He says, the series really aged up over the years. It went to a darker place and it didn't fit the Cartoon Network brand any longer. So it was a hidden gem that Disney brought to our attention and we jumped at it. And she's talking about them purchasing the rights to put it on Netflix. And that's where Clone Wars got a lot more attention.
Oh yeah, I remember when it first came on Netflix. I binged like the first 3 seasons right away. It's definitely that accessibility. They're, and not to get off theme here, topic, but Netflix does that a lot, where these sort of undiscovered shows end up on there and just like start to explode, just because so many people are streaming their content now rather than actually watching it on, live TV.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we had a nice discussion. I think we're all sort of in the same area on it. I think I'm still thinking that certain kids should not necessarily watch it as much, but I'm leaning more towards that of opening it up. But I would say that there are certain pieces that are not great for young children, but I would also say that there are things that are great for them. Any final thoughts, Ethan?
Yeah, no, there's definitely, right. Just like you said, there's definitely darker themes. Some I forgot about, like we discussed, and, some that are, lots of episodes that are perfectly acceptable for younger generations, for younger kids. So yeah, I think it's definitely for kids, and but it's also got those episodes for the older people too. So.
Yep. Final thoughts, Sarah?
Yeah.
Star Wars is for everyone. And if you haven't watched the Clone Wars and you've listened to this whole podcast, I guess kudos to you, and I would recommend checking it out.
You don't have to if you don't want to, though. Because I will say I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but if you want to check it out, absolutely check it out. It is for everyone, but doesn't have to be. I think that's the best.
Yeah.
And that's where we're trying to go with the podcast, is that showing that Star Wars is for everyone, and anybody can enjoy it, but you don't have to enjoy all of it to enjoy Star Wars.
Right. Well, I remember when you first started watching it, you would tell me that, you didn't like how it focused so much on Anakin and Obi-Wan, and, how much you didn't enjoy it in the beginning.
Yeah. So we can have a whole nother podcast about my feelings on Clone Wars.
Yeah, sure.
and each other's feelings. But thank you very much for listening. And if you want to contact us, you can contact us through Twitter at Who Shot One SW Pod. That's Who Shot One SW Pod. And if you want to contact us through Gmail, you can contact us at Who Shot First SW Pod. That's who@gmail.com. That's Who Shot First SW Pod @gmail.com. And listen to us on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, and send us a review. We're looking to expand, and you leaving a review gives us a better access to other people and helps people find us. So, any final thoughts? All right.
Nope.
Well, as you all know, never tell us the odds.
Those the odds.
Never tell us the odds.
Hello there, and thank you for joining me. This is Daniel Talks About Star Wars, the show where I do exactly as that name suggests. I am the titular Daniel, and on each episode of this podcast I will be discussing something from the multimedia empire that is that galaxy far, far away. Often I'll be doing it solo, but sometimes I'll be joined by guests. So if you're a like-minded individual, or hell, even if you're not and you disagree with everything I have to say about the franchise, give us a listen. I'm just a fan talking about something he loves. Daniel Talks About Star Wars, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Never tell me the odds.
People are counting on us. The galaxy is counting on us. Solo, we'll figure it out. We'll use the Force. That's not how the Force works. Oh, really? You're cold?
Sorry, I have to interject. Your cat is Solo is just totally all into this Ahsoka shirt right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
He's trying to build himself a little nest in it.
Yeah, right. Get all snuggled up in it.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's what we're chuckling at here.
Excuse me. In this, shut up.
Sorry, my cat just sneezed all over my leg. Got lots of cat shenanigans going on tonight.
That's
In
why we
middle
never
school, I
met
was.
before now. Oh. Yeah, I got her with the cheese.
That's right.